Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our commercial customer webinar today. My name is Sapna Dixit. I'm the Strategic Accounts Manager at Peninsula Clean Energy, and we periodically host these webinars to give everyone, our customers, an overview of what's happening at Peninsula Clean Energy, some of our programs and updates and relevant topics around energy. And so today we're going to talk about our 24/7 renewable energy goal that we have at Peninsula Clean Energy, and we just released a white paper. So we have Siobhan Doherty, our Director of Power Resources, going to go over some of our analysis regarding that. So before we get into the topic, I just have a quick agenda. Next slide. So we're going to go ahead and do some housekeeping, and then we have Jan Pepper here, our CEO, to give a quick welcome. And then I have some program updates that we're going to go through, and then I'll turn it over to Siobhan. Next slide. So we are going to record this webinar, and there'll be time for Q&A at the end. So, and we'll be sending out the slides as well. So feel free to unmute and ask questions as a small group. Please go ahead and ask questions during the presentation if you'd like to, or you can save them for the end as well. And hopefully it won't happen, but if we do get disconnected, then just check your email and we'll figure out what the next steps are. But I don't anticipate that happening. So hopefully we won't have any technical issues. Next slide. So I'm just going to introduce Jan Pepper, our CEO, to give a quick introduction.
Hello. Hi, I'm Jan Pepper. I'm the CEO of Peninsula Clean Energy. And we're very excited to have all of you here today and to update you on what we're doing in our 24/7 goal. And I'd just like to thank you for your support of Peninsula Clean Energy. Our main business is to provide you with clean and green renewable energy at a discounted price, which we have done since our inception in 2016. So I think what you're going to hear today from Siobhan will be very exciting and interesting for you. And we're very committed to this goal to really be leading the industry to further make our grid more sustainable and green, while also continuing to provide savings and value for our customers. So thank you again. Thanks, Sapna.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Jan. Thanks so much for introducing that and being here. So I think we can move on. Next slide. All right, I'm just going to go through a couple of updates. I wanted to remind everyone about a few programs that we have available for commercial facilities, and just give a quick overview. And please do reach out to me if you have any, if you have questions or interest in pursuing these programs further. So next slide. So our electric vehicle charging incentive program, this is a program that we have. It's $28 million in funding for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We have a total goal of installing 3,500 ports by 2024 in San Mateo County, and we have incentives for level 2 workplace charging. And so through this program, you can get free technical assistance when you're doing the design of your project. It's a $4,000 per port incentive, and there is a website, a link right there, pencleanenergy.com/EVready, and you can apply to get started with this process. There is no commitment. It's just initial technical assistance where we can kind of guide you and let you know. We have a partner, Clear Result, that has the expertise of doing that design for you and allowing you to kind of determine different paths forward in terms of the number of charging stations and what the design should look like and how the incentive would work. So if you have questions, please let me know, or you can go ahead and apply at that link. Next slide. So our LCFS, Low Carbon Fuel Standard program, is also available. LCFS is a program that's run by CARB, the California Air Resources Board, and it's kind of an incentive program to reward EV charging station owners by using electricity as a clean fuel for vehicle charging. And this program allows you to delegate the LCFS credits that you would normally be able to use for your current EV charging to PCE and we would be able to have the administrative processing for handling those credits and selling them on the LCFS market. And there's a revenue sharing mechanism there. And if you're interested in kind of talking through this, we'd be happy to set up a call and review the details on this program with you. Next slide. And the last one I wanted to go over is Data Connect. It's the tool that we launched early this year. It's really a dashboard where Peninsula Clean Energy customers and third-party program providers can log in and access customer energy data for your reporting, for bill management, and you can get consumption, cost, and interval data through this platform. And you can share that energy data with your third-party program providers that are doing energy projects. And so it's a dashboard where you can download the data in multiple formats. There's also a backend API to integrate with your internal energy management systems. So if you'd like further information, please do either click on that link. There's a lot of information and tutorials there, or you can contact me for more details as well. Next slide. All right, so I think we're ready to kind of hand it over to Siobhan Doherty, our Director of Power Resources, for the main presentation about our 24/7 renewable energy goal. So Siobhan, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you so much. I'm Siobhan Doherty. I'm the Director of Power Resources for Peninsula Clean Energy. I've been in the energy industry for over 15 years and have been with Peninsula Clean Energy for the past 5 years. My team is responsible for procuring the power resources that we serve our customers. And this includes planning out how we're going to meet our goals in the future. Next slide, please. So first I want to note that in December of last year, we published this white paper on our path to 24/7 renewable energy. As an organization, we've set a goal to provide our customers by 2025 with renewable energy on a time coincident basis. And so this white paper goes into a lot of detail on that. We'll get into a little bit of the surface information on that today, but please do refer to that white paper if you have more questions, or feel free to reach out to us as well. Next slide, please. So first we want to talk about why is 24/7 renewable energy important. So our goal is to reduce emissions in every hour, especially during the evenings and overnight. This can also help us to retire additional fossil fuel power plants. And we want to be a leader in the industry. We want to create a blueprint for others to follow around sustainable, scalable, renewable energy. Next slide, please. All right. Since you guys are here at this webinar, I expect you have seen this graphic before, but this explains how Peninsula Clean Energy works and how the electricity grid works. So we are procuring and delivering energy to the California grid. The electricity grid distributes that electricity to our customers, and then you guys, our customers, are receiving that electricity from the grid. Next slide, please. We want to talk a little bit about the electricity grid. So one way to think about it is as a river of water. And similar to a river, there's lots of streams feeding into and potentially out of that river. And anytime water feeds into the river from a stream, it's impossible to track where that particular molecule of water came from. Similarly, there's lots of different streams of electricity going onto and out of the grid, and it's impossible to track specific electrons on the grid. What we do is track this through contractual mechanisms. So we have a contract that puts solar energy onto the grid on behalf of our customers, and we track how many megawatt hours are going into the grid, and we track how many megawatt hours our customers are consuming or pulling off of the grid. And one of the things we're trying to track is the time when the renewables are going onto the grid the same time that our customers are taking electricity off of the grid. That's what we're really thinking about when we think about 24/7 matching. Next slide, please. So currently, Peninsula Clean Energy is providing 100% resources that are either carbon-free or renewable energy when we measure this on an annual basis. So for example, we'll look at how many megawatt hours did our customers consume throughout the entire calendar year. And then we'll measure how many megawatt hours we delivered to the grid in that same calendar year. This is the current industry standard. However, this does not show the time coincident nature. So we're just looking at that consumption and supply on the annual basis. We're trying to move into a time coincident in the future. So if we go to the next slide, I think we'll get into that in more detail. So when we match on an annual basis, we're not looking at when specifically throughout the year our customers are consuming or we're producing. So this is one example of an hour. This is July 4th, 2020. We're looking at 2 p.m. And in this hour, we've supplied 900 megawatt hours of renewable and carbon-free power to the grid. However, our customers in this hour only use about 350 megawatt hours. So in this hour, we've delivered more than what our customers needed. So that's one of the problems with doing just an annual match. Next slide, please. We can also have some hours where we're not delivering enough electricity when we look at just the annual matching. So this is looking at an hour in February 2020 at 7 p.m. And in this hour, our customers are using a little over 500 megawatt hours of electricity, and our contracts are delivering about 100 megawatt hours. So that other 400 is being consumed from whatever the standard grid supply is, which tends to have a higher emissions factor than our renewable energy or our carbon-free energy. So this is the other reason that we want to look at hourly matching. In some cases, we're not producing enough power in particular hours and then relying on the grid. Next slide, please. So this is looking at our estimated emissions intensity. So across the horizontal axis is every day of the year, starting in January and going through the end of December. And then on the vertical axis, we're looking at hours of the day, starting at 12 a.m. And then going to basically 11:59 p.m. And then the red are times when there's a higher emissions intensity, and the green is when emissions are 0. So those are the times when we're delivering the most renewable or carbon-free energy to the grid. So what we can see here is that we are able to deliver a lot of renewable energy, particularly in the summertime and in the middle of the day. And where we're having a little bit more difficulty getting to that renewable or carbon-free energy is in the winter time. And that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of solar in California, and that solar energy is delivering primarily during the summer daytime. Next slide, please. So when we think about how to get to 24/7 renewable energy, there's a couple of different steps we're going to take. So this chart is showing a typical day. The horizontal axis in this case is hours of the day from 1 to 24. And the vertical axis is megawatts of electricity. The black line is how much we expect our customers to use electricity in each hour of the day. And then the colors represent the different sources of electricity for meeting that customer demand. And this is just a hypothetical demonstration of how we're going to get there. But one of the ways we want to do, one of the strategies we use to get to a 24/7 portfolio is getting a diverse mix of renewable energy resources. So in this case, we can see at the bottom is geothermal in red. And geothermal is what we call a baseload resource. So it's producing pretty much 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then next we have a very small slice of small hydro in light blue. And then we have wind, and wind tends to produce more overnight in California. And then in yellow, we have our solar energy. And in this case, you can see we have some excess solar energy in the middle of the day. And then in the evenings and overnight, we're pulling energy from the grid to meet the rest of our load during those hours. And we want to put together a combination of resources that decreases that gray grid energy. Next slide, please. So the second step in our strategy is to use energy storage to shift the timing. So on the previous slide, we had a lot of the yellow excess solar. In this slide, we're using electricity energy storage. We're taking the solar that's being produced in the middle of the day, that excess solar, we're putting it into a battery, and then we're discharging that battery in the evening and overnight to get rid of that gray grid energy that we saw on the last slide. Next slide. All right, so then step 3 is thinking about how we can shift electricity usage to different times of day to help us to better match up with when our energy supply is occurring. So in this case, we have a dotted black line. That was the same load that we had previously on the other slide. And now we have also a solid black line, and that's our new shaped load. And we are trying to increase the amount of load in the middle of the day when we have that excess solar, and then decrease it in the evenings or overnight. And so some ways that we could do that is if we have EV charging, trying to incentivize more EV charging in the middle of the day, for example, and less of it overnight. There's lots of other ways that we can look at this, but this is the third step, is trying to match up when customers use load, use electricity, with when we have the most resources to serve that load from the renewables. Next slide. All right, yeah, that was my last slide. So if there's any questions, would be happy to answer those.
Yeah, so if anyone has questions, please go ahead and unmute and ask them, or you can enter it into the chat, or whatever anyone feels comfortable with. And Siobhan, can you talk a little bit about maybe what our commercial customers how their load and their strategies around their energy load can support kind of our goals with getting to 24/7?
Yeah, so I think the one thing to say is that the cheapest and most prevalent, most plentiful supply of renewable energy in California right now is solar energy. So thinking of one of the things that we're trying to think about is how do we have more of our electricity consumption take place during those solar hours, so we can take advantage of that, or how can we use energy storage to shift some of that solar energy into other hours of the day. We also see that solar produces a lot more in the summertime than in the wintertime. So we're trying to think about how do we build a portfolio that takes that into account. In San Mateo County, we tend to have higher load in the winter than the summer because we are such a Mediterranean climate. We don't have some of the higher heat waves that you see in the Central Valley.
All right, well, does anyone have any questions?
I have a question. Has to do with sourcing your renewables. Where is it that you are able to go to source renewables for the peninsula?
Yeah, so because we're part of what's called the California Independent System Operator, or CAISO, which is a statewide electricity grid, we can source renewables from anywhere in California. That's part of the CAISO. And we can also source from out of state if the renewables are being delivered into California. So far, we've only procured in-state renewables, but there is some benefit and some resources that are limited availability in California. So for example, a lot of the new geothermal that's being built is not being built in California. There's a lot of geothermal resource that's already been developed here. And then also with wind energy, we can get different wind energy generation times from different geographic locations. So in some cases, it's helpful to go outside of the state to find some of those different generation profiles.
Okay. Do you have any hydro coming into the system? Is that still available in California?
Yeah, there's both large hydro and small hydro. According to the California rules around renewables, only the small hydro counts as RPS or as renewable. And we have 4 contracts with small hydro. There is still a lot of large hydro, and it's definitely generating. A lot of that is owned by PG&E or the other incumbent utilities, and it's not available for us to procure. So we've focused on renewable energy, on the small hydro and the other renewable resources.
Early in the presentation, you talked about carbon-free energy as a separate item from renewable. I assumed you were talking about hydro.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right. So there's a great question on the chat right now that I'm really curious about too. So if you look in the chat, there's a young lady who asked a question. That's a very good question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Do you want me to stop and do you want to read it out, or you want me to just respond?
Sure. Yeah. What's happening to the excess load that's produced via solar during the summertime currently if it's not being captured through batteries?
Right now, what I showed was typical for our customers. If there's excess on the system, it could be curtailed. So the independent system operator, CAISO, would ask the power plant to stop producing. And that does happen right now in the springtime to a certain extent. In the spring, there tends to be excess generation from hydro coming out of the winter, as well as lower loads, lower electricity consumption, because the weather is more mild. So curtailment is one thing that can happen. Because we're part of the electricity grid, even if our customers are not using enough electricity to use all that solar, if there's excess, it could be used by other customers. Because we've purchased it, we still get credit for that, but the actual electrons could be consumed by somebody else.
Okay, great. Thanks, Siobhan. And I think there was a question in the chat box. Another one, how would large scale building electrification change the predicted load curve?
Yeah, that is a very good question. And electrification is a priority for Peninsula Clean Energy. Because it's a newer, there has not been a lot of large scale electrification. We're still figuring out what that's going to look like. So we're doing some modeling and analysis now to think about in what different scenarios might that load curve change. So that's a really good question, something we're still trying to figure out, and working closely with our programs team who's leading a lot of electrification work to think about what that's going to look like in the future. And as part of that, I could also say that we're trying to think about, is there a way that we could set up electrification to help us meet our goal and reduce emissions by finding the right combination of renewable resources or load shaping through that electrification process as well.
Okay, thank you. Hope that answered that question. Another one we have from Matt, does the current REC market system allow PCE to assure customers they will be 24/7, or will another type of EAC be required?
Yeah, so not right now. The REC system, which is, it just tracks renewables according to month and year vintage. It's not tracking what hours the electricity was generated in. There's a lot of work though being done on how do we create the right systems to allow that tracking. Until that's done, Peninsula Clean Energy will have to think, do our self audit or think about using a third party to audit. It's not part of the current REC tracking system.
Okay, thank you. Another question we have, would storing excess electricity in batteries during the summertime increase the rates for the community members since it is a new service?
Yeah, great question. Certainly keeping rates low is a very high priority for Peninsula Clean Energy. So whenever we look at a new resource, we do a ton of analysis on the cost of that resource to make sure we can keep those rates low. There is dramatic decreases in battery costs that are happening. And the batteries are going to be replacing the procurement we're doing from other resources. So we're always, in order to maintain reliability on the system, we have to procure a certain amount of this type of capacity. So when we look at procuring batteries, we look at the cost of that compared to our alternatives, and we ensure that we're negotiating contracts that are going to allow us to keep our rates low for you guys.
And I think another part of that question was, where are these batteries? Assuming where are they located?
Yeah. So we've signed 3 contracts for batteries. 2 of those are paired with solar systems directly, and 1 is going to be a standalone battery, and they're all located in California. 2 of those are near, I think, Rosamond, and then 1 more is further south in California. But because they're all part of the same electricity system, they're going to provide electricity to all of our customers.
Okay, great. Thanks, Siobhan. Let's see, I think that's all that we have in the chat. Does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask? Or on any of these topics, or anything else that you might be curious about and related to our power procurement process? It's a great time to ask Siobhan.
I have a question.
Sure.
With regards to acquiring all this clean energy, are there competitive areas that you have to compete against to claim the amount of energy each year, or is it pretty free and open right now for you to get all that renewable energy?
Let me try to answer what I think. Let me try to answer and let me know if I'm not getting the question quite right.
Okay.
Anytime that we procure renewable energy, we'll sign a contract to procure the whatever is produced by a particular project. So we will have access to all of the renewable energy that we have contracted for. Because it's renewable energy, there's going to be variations depending on the solar resource or the wind resource. So how sunny it is. Is it a cloudy day? Is it rainy? All of those pieces. That will change the output a little bit. Whenever we look to signing one of those contracts, we run a competitive procurement process. So we reach out to the companies that are developing those projects and ask them to send us a bid. That's one of the ways that we try to keep our rates as low as possible by getting that lower cost of energy. But once we've procured the energy, we have the right to all the electricity that's produced by a particular power plant. Does that answer what you're asking?
Yeah, thank you. It does.
Okay.
Very well.
Great.
Okay, thank you. And then another question that just came in: what percentage of the renewable energy that PCE purchases is local?
Yeah, unfortunately, very little of the renewable energy is located in San Mateo County. Customers that have behind the meter systems don't get counted into our procurement numbers because they are owned by those customers. And since San Mateo County is a very dense area, and a lot of our land is also protected parkland, there isn't enough room to build the size of the power plants that we need to serve our customer usage. We do have one project, our largest solar project, the Wright Solar Project, is located just outside Los Llanos, where we recently expanded to. But that's the most probably local project that we have right now.
Okay. All right, anybody have anything else? Any other questions come to mind right now?
I would say we're interested in local procurement. So if you are aware of a location that would be suitable for renewable energy development, I think that's something that we would be interested in talking about further.
I have one question. You mentioned earlier on that you guys only purchase the clean power from suppliers that actually pipe it into California. How many suppliers, or I want to say neighboring states, passive travel are you able to purchase from?
Sorry, can you say that one more time? I didn't catch all.
Yeah, so on the earlier you mentioned that that you guys only purchase the clean power from power plants that are actually supplying to the state of California.
Yeah.
How many of those are available to you to purchase from?
Oh, how many power plants are there that supply to California?
That are outside California, or?
They're outside of California. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that number is. I'm not quite sure what that number is. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I think that probably wraps it up for Siobhan's presentation. Thank you, Siobhan. I hope that was informative for everyone. And I think we can move on. So we actually, that was kind of the end of our presentation today. We wanted to make sure that we give all of our commercial customers a chance to understand what we're targeting in terms of 24/7 renewable energy, especially because it really affects the power that you'll be receiving at your facilities. So as we move forward, and we're going to continue to strive for this goal. If you have questions, please do reach out to me. If you're curious about anything, any other questions come up in the future, let me know. We will plan to host additional webinars probably once a quarter. So as we go forward, we'll have another one towards the fall timeframe. So please look out for that. And I hope you enjoyed your DoorDash lunch that we sent out. If you didn't get it, let me know. Happy to send another send out a gift card for you so you can have it at another time. But I really appreciate everybody's time on the webinar today, and we can give you back quite a bit of time of your lunch hour. So, so thanks again for joining, and we will talk to everyone very soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye.